So I think I'm going to do something I have never imagined myself doing in my life, which is arguing against mandatory vaccination, something I've taken the opposite position on always. But here with the SARS-CoV-2 vaccines, I'm going to make that case for two reasons. One, as Julian alluded to, just practical reasons. I mean, right now in the United States, with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, the messenger RNA vaccines, we have about 40 million doses for a 2-dose vaccine. That means we could immunize about 20 million people. Yesterday, the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices at the CDC said that the first tier group to get this vaccine are people who live or work in long-term care facilities or people who are essential healthcare workers. That's 24 million people to get a 2-dose vaccine. So we don't even have enough for that first tier. Then you get to the second tier. This is before you get to the general population. Then you get to the second tier, which involves other other essential workers like those who work in transportation, law enforcement, education, utilities. That's another 87 million people for a 2-dose vaccine. Still haven't gotten to the general population. Then you go to the third tier, the so-called 1C tier. That's people over 65 years of age who certainly are at high risk of dying from this disease when they catch it. That's another 53 million people. And then you have adults with high-risk medical conditions like obesity, diabetes, pulmonary disease, heart disease, which is another 100 million people. Now, there's a lot of overlap actually among those groups. I'm a person who's over 65, yet a healthcare worker, but it still adds up to about half of the adult American population to get a 2-dose vaccine, which is 300 million doses. Right now, it looks like we're only going to be able to make about 2 to 5 million doses a week. So it's going to be a long time before we have enough vaccine to be able to say that you have to get it. The second reason, again, Julian had alluded to this, is that this is a bat coronavirus that's just made its debut in the human population. It's been out for about a year, and it's already caused a number of clinical and pathological observations that one would have never predicted. I mean, it is a virus which can affect your taste and smell, meaning that it has the capacity actually to enter your brain. It is a virus that causes vasculitis, meaning inflammation of blood vessels, because every organ in your body has a blood supply, therefore all organs can be affected. What respiratory virus does this? This virus was billed as a winter respiratory virus, meaning a pneumonia-causing virus that was coming out of Wuhan. It is anything other than that. Because it can cause vasculitis, it can cause strokes, heart attacks, kidney disease, liver disease. Also, like all sort of viruses that, like this one, are sort of the envelope viruses spread by small droplets, it should be gone in the winter. Gone in the summer, much as flu is gone in the summer, but not this virus. It rages in hot and humid climates like Florida, California, Texas. It causes an unusual multi-system inflammatory disease in children called MIS-C disease. It causes a decrease in immunity in the sense that it can be immunosuppressive in men, particularly because it can cause you to make an antibody response against interferon, which is an important immune mediator. So this is just in the first year. So in the first year, you have this difficult to characterize elusive virus, which you are now about to meet with a series of vaccine strategies like messenger RNA or replication defective human adenoviruses or replication defective simian adenoviruses with which you have no clinical experience. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, I think it's fair to say that over the next 2 years, there is going to be a learning curve here, as is true with pretty much any medical innovation. I mean, there is not a medical innovation on the face of this earth that has not been associated with a human price. And I think that that's also going to be true here. So I think it is fair at least to wait until all of that has been settled out, which could take a year or two before we know that. And then with all that information at hand, then I agree with Julian that it reasonably could be mandated, but not for a while. So thank you. I deal with the anti-vaccine movement in the United States all the time. They particularly hate me, by the way, which you're welcome to see if you just Google my name. But, I think that sometimes you have to compel people to do the right thing. I mean, if you look in the United States, there are 2 states that have essentially mandatory vaccination, which are Mississippi and West Virginia. Not the states you would necessarily pick. I mean, not states necessarily known for their public health achievements. Those 2 states have the highest vaccination rate in the United States. Because as Julian said, there is a pop-off valve, which is that you're not pinned down and forced to get a vaccine whether you want it or not. You don't get to go to the school you want to go to. You're going to have to homeschool, which is an emotional burden and an economic burden. And it's hard for people to do. So if you want to be part of society, you want to go to public school, even private school, in those 2 states, you have to You have to be vaccinated. Now, because of outbreaks, there have been 3 more states now that have eliminated any sort of philosophical or religious exemptions to vaccines: New York, Maine, and California. So we're getting there. I think we're getting to moving toward mandatory vaccination without a pop-off valve. And I think what happens is you see an increase in vaccination rates. Sometimes you have to compel people to do the right thing. I think that's fine. I can answer that question. I mean, it's a single-stranded RNA virus, so it mutates with every cycle of replication, much like flu is a single-stranded RNA virus or measles is a single-stranded RNA virus. The question is, which one is it going to be most like? I mean, flu mutates so much from one year to the next that you need to give a yearly vaccine. Measles has been, the vaccine was introduced in this country in 1963 and has not in any sense mutated away from the vaccine. So I think, and measles has been used, initially sporadically. Then we eliminated measles from this country. Then, because a critical number of parents chose not to vaccinate their children because of false beliefs about the vaccine, imported from England, by the way. Thank you, Andrew Wakefield. Thanks for sending them here, by the way. Really appreciate that. First it was the tea tax, then it was this. But I think that that at least one wouldn't imagine that intermittent use would create a mutation that was critical enough to be distinct from the vaccine. It's certainly not the measles story. So I don't think so.
Can I ask Dr. Offit a question? He raised this interesting issue of some concerns about the vaccines, and I was wondering if you could just elaborate on what theoretical concerns you might have with an adenovirus vaccine or with the carrier media that are used with mRNA vaccines. I mean, what obviously these are new vaccines which have never been used before, but what might give you some cause for concern?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, the UK vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is a replication defective simian adenovirus, has had 2 clinical holds. One was for so-called undiagnosed multiple sclerosis. The second was transverse myelitis. The feeling by the UK regulators was that these were coincidental and not causal associations, although it's hard to prove that. That was their feeling. What's a little worrisome is that both of those processes have similar pathogenesis, which is to say antibodies or T cells directed against myelin-basic protein, which is the protein that sort of is associated with the sheathing of nerves. And the Johnson & Johnson product, another replication defective adenovirus, also had a clinical hold. Now, time will tell. What worried me the most about that transverse myelitis case, multiple sclerosis is relatively common, but transverse myelitis, has a background rate of, transverse myelitis is just the inflammation of the segment of the spinal cord. The background rate of transverse myelitis is 1 per 200,000. That was seen in the first 9,000 vaccinees. Statistically, it's possible, it's just odd. So, you just have to be open-minded. I mean, my own person, I'm the co-inventor of the rotavirus vaccine. When our vaccine was released in 2006, but there was a rotavirus vaccine that came onto the market in 1999. That virus had been studied for 50 years. I mean, as an animal pathogen, as a human pathogen, 50 years. And when it caused this intestinal blockage called intussusception, that was a surprise to everyone. That was a sobering experience. I mean, it wasn't seen with animal strain or in humans. And here, after 50 years of study, it's rare, but it was a real phenomenon occurring in about 1 in 10,000, 1 in 30,000 children, and it caused 1 death. So I guess I'm humbled. I'm humbled by nature. I think nature gives its secrets up slowly and grudgingly, and often with a human price. And so I'm sure there are things we don't know, and I'm just trying to be humble in that.